Hi, and welcome to Thursdays with Rose. Today I'm making meatloaf muffins with garlicky mashed potato topping. So let's see what we need to get started. I have some ground pork. I've got 12 ounces of ground pork here, extra lean. I have 93% or 97% lean ground turkey. I've got half a cup of breadcrumbs. I've got 1 packet of beefy onion Lipton cup of soup mix. I've got a half cup of red, green peppers and onions chopped. I have a full cup of grated zucchini. I have people in my family that don't like vegetables, so I can grate up zucchini and put it in recipes and they don't know. I'll use these for a little banana boats or maybe roasted zucchini. Make sure that when you grate zucchini, if you have large ones like these were, that you get the seeds out first because they can be a little bitter. I'm going to be using 1/3 cup of liquid eggs. I'll be using my no sugar added ketchup, and that will be, let's see, how much ketchup? I'll be adding a 1/4 cup, a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a 1/4 cup of shredded fat-free cheddar cheese, and I don't have that here, 2 teaspoons of oregano, and I have a tablespoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of mixed Italian seasoning. For the potato topping, I will have 2 pounds of, I have russets here. I'm going to peel those and cut them into cubes, put them in a pot to boil until fork tender, and I'll be adding garlic to the pot while 2 tablespoons of ground garlic, 2 to 2.5 tablespoons. We'll see how it works out. I've got black pepper and some fine sea salt to taste. I've got light country crock, and I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of the light spread. If you can have real butter in your diet, that's preferable, but I'm using the light spread. I'm going to have 2 tablespoons of chicken broth. I will have unsweetened plain almond milk, and that's going to be 2 tablespoons. I'll have 2 tablespoons of Greek yogurt, plain non-fat. I'll have 2 or 3 tablespoons of light sour cream, your choice, your preference, how much you would like in that. And this is the ground garlic I'll be using, just 2 or 2.5 tablespoons of that. I also have some thyme here, so I'll be chopping that up. We'll be using 2 tablespoons, or you can use a little more depending on what your likes are. I'm going to be putting these in a muffin pan. You should be using muffin liners, metal muffin liners, preferably 2 for these. But I'm out of muffin liners and my store didn't have any. I also have this brownie pan, so I'll use that as well if I run out of room in the cupcake pan. So let's get started. We'll be back. So I have all my meatloaf ingredients in the bowl, and I'll show you how I mix that up in a moment. But these are the potatoes. I ended up having to peel 1 more potato to get me to almost 2 pounds of potatoes once they were peeled and all the bad spots taken out. I used russet potatoes. Yukon Gold potatoes are usually the best for making mashed potatoes. If you don't want to go through the trouble of making homemade mashed potatoes, which I usually don't unless it's a holiday or a special Sunday dinner, instant mashed potatoes work for this recipe just fine. So I've got all my mashed potato ingredients all ready to go. I did reserve a little of the sour cream and almond milk just in case it's too thick or thin. I can add a little to it. I'd rather have too little than not enough in this bowl, than too much in this bowl for when I get started. So I'm going to be using my spaghetti pot, which I love, for my potatoes. I've got them just covered with water, and I added salt to the water, just a little, for my friend Emily, who's going to say, Rose is using salt. So here we go. I'm going to get these boiling, and then we'll put together the meatloaf and get it into the meatloaf tin. in just a moment. I made some zucchini spears that I'm going to roast to go along with my portion of the dinner. And I have a Ziploc bag here that I'm going to attempt to cut the corner off to pipe the hot mashed potatoes onto the top of the meatloaf muffins. So we'll see how that works out here in a few minutes. So we're just going to combine this. And remember, handling ground meat too much is going to make it tough. So try to get this combined. Don't take your aggression out on your ground meat. Use something else. Make sure we get all of that ground zucchini I got snug in there. They also don't care for onions and peppers, but you can't taste those once everything is combined, so it's all fine. This is a good consistency. You can use all ground turkey. You don't have to add the pork. I would suggest using not quite as lean for the ground turkey because it gets very dry and meatloaf. Also, you can use, I used to use, in my former life, I used a mixture of ground beef, ground turkey, and veal. And that was a great meatloaf mix. That used to be our favorite recipe to use. So I'm done mixing this up. I'm going to fill it's actually my Pampered Chef brownie pan. I'm going to start with that one because I love the shapes. I'm going to spray that down with some olive oil spray. And then I'm going to add my meatloaf mix with my ice cream scoop and fill these to the top. And we'll show you how that looks. So here's how our brownie pan turned out. I ended up with a total of 16 muffins. I've got 4 in my cupcake pan and then 12 in my brownie pan. So I ended up with 8 servings. There's 2 meatloaf muffins, squares, per serving. So that gives us quite a bit. We'll have these for 2 dinners in a row, and then I will freeze the rest or use them for sandwiches. So my potatoes are boiling, and I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. We'll put these in for 15 minutes and then check. The meatloaf should be at 165 degrees internally when complete. So my potatoes are added with the other ingredients that I need for that. I'm going to mash them up. And once I'm done mashing, I'm going to blend them really well with the mixer because we don't want any lumps in our mashed potatoes. And our mini meatloaves are almost done, so we'll be adding those potatoes to the tops. You can add Mexican cheese to the top with some salsa, just a little gravy, make it marinara, and some mozzarella cheese on top. There are so many different things you can do with these. I'm probably just going to put a little gravy on mine. My husband will probably use marinara on his and some extra cheese. So I'll get these mashed and whipped up, and then we'll take a look at the rest. So I attempted to make a pastry bag out of a Ziploc bag so I could pipe my mashed potatoes onto my meatloaf squares or muffins, and it didn't work out. I ruined 2 bags, and so I'm going to do this Rose's way because apparently Rose can't use a piping bag on a Thursday or any day. So we're going to do these the old-fashioned way. So these are ones that I've already topped with about a 1/4 cup or an ice cream scoop full of potatoes. And so I'm going to finish the topping. If you can use a piping bag to do this, then I'm proud of you and go for it. I don't want any lessons. I've had people try. I'm just going to blame it on arthritis. I can't use a piping bag or piping tool. So I'm going to get potatoes on all of these. I have 4 more of these. Not in the casserole yet. They're just in here to settle. I'm not going to be baking them anymore. Make sure we get enough potatoes on all of them. So we're just icing these meatloafs. And if you have time to make homemade potatoes, nothing's better than homemade mashed potatoes. But instant potatoes, like I said, work just fine for this. We love instant potatoes. They're easy, they're fast, add water and go. A lot of different flavors. But sometimes you just really want homemade mashed potatoes. And they're awfully good with meatloaf too. So, my cup doesn't want to release my potatoes. We got plenty of seasoning in here, but I'd like to add a little bit of paprika. I'll be putting a little gravy on the tops of the ones that I'll be eating, and I'll show you how this all turned out in just a second. So this is how it turned out. This is my servings. I've got 2 squares, muffin squares, and this is just to show you what it looks like in the center. I roasted some of that zucchini with a little bit of Parmesan cheese, olive oil, garlic, of course, and put it in the air fryer. This is how the center looks. It is still nice and moist, and I'll take a bite just to see how it tastes. Someone has to taste it. I am not a meatloaf person. I don't normally like meatloaf, except rarely. But this is really good meatloaf. So I hope that you try it, and let me know if you do. Thanks for joining Thursdays with Rose, and I will talk to you next week.